It's 4 in the afternoon on Tuesday, September 2nd, here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I'm Laah Hyun-kyung. We begin in North Korea, where the regime appears to be making efforts to break away from its diplomatic isolation. Reports are coming in that a high-level official from its ruling Workers' Party will start a European tour later in the week. Hwang Sung-hee has our top story.
A possible trip to Europe by a seasoned North Korean diplomat is drawing further attention to Pyongyang's recent diplomatic overture. Kang Sok-ju, secretary of the Central Committee of the Workers' Party of Korea, will reportedly visit Germany, Belgium, Switzerland, and Italy starting late this week. Experts say that given Kang's status in North Korea, his trip may serve a specific purpose. This as Pyongyang is accelerating its diplomacy with Washington. Senior U.S. officials reportedly visited North Korea last week on a military aircraft to discuss the issue of 3 American citizens detained in the north. North Korean Foreign Minister Lee Soo-young will be in New York City for the UN General Assembly that begins on September 24th. Speculation is ripe the two countries may revive their dormant communication channels. Europe has been the site of secret meetings between North Korea and the U.S. in the past. Kang may also lead high-level talks with Japan during his stay in Switzerland. His visit coincides with a seminar on the Japanese abduction issue slated for September 10th in Geneva, which senior Japanese officials are expected to attend. As Pyongyang takes strides to re-engage with Washington and Tokyo, some say Seoul could ultimately be the one left out of the diplomatic circle. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
And in another sign that Pyongyang could be trying to re-engage with Washington, the regime allowed 3 American citizens detained in North Korea to speak to CNN. Experts say the North is using the media to bring Washington to the negotiating table. Choi Yoo-sun has more.
In an exclusive interview with CNN, the 3 American detainees said they were being treated humanely, but that they hoped Washington would soon help them return home. Kenneth Bae, serving a 15-year sentence for alleged hostile acts to overthrow the North Korean government, said he was doing hard labor 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. His diabetes, high blood pressure, and kidney stones have worsened, having gone back and forth between the hospital and the labor camp for the past 18 months. Asking the U.S. government to send an envoy to win their release, Bae said his only hope is returning home and seeing his family again. Matthew Todd Miller, awaiting trial after he ripped up his tourist visa and sought asylum in the North, said Washington, which often promotes its priority of protecting U.S. citizens, wasn't doing enough to help him. Jeffrey Edward Fowle, soon to stand trial after leaving a Bible at his hotel in the communist state, urged CNN to let the world know more about his predicament. Having no diplomatic relations with North Korea, the U.S. government's only contact with the men is through the Swedish embassy in Pyongyang. Stressing there is no greater priority than the welfare and safety of Americans abroad, the State Department urged Pyongyang to grant Kenneth Bae amnesty in light of his poor health. North Korea's strategic use of the media to seek dialogue with the U.S. is increasing pressure on the Obama administration ahead of the midterm elections in November. Now the question is whether Washington will send a former president or a prominent political figure, as it has in the past, to broker the detainees' release, and if that could lead to a resumption of dialogue between the U.S. and the North. Choi Yoo-sun, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, Washington is said to be done with its site survey that will determine where to deploy American anti-ballistic missile defenses. With North Korea ratcheting up its threats, South Korea may be a prime spot. Kim Min-ji reports.
The United States has reportedly finished conducting site surveys of possible locations to deploy its advanced missile defense system in Korea. Sources familiar with the matter say Washington has been checking out feasible locations in Asia to deploy its Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System and military effects since earlier this year. The so-called THAAD system can strike down medium and intermediate range ballistic missiles mid-air. Washington is likely to make a final decision on a site before the Korea-U.S. Security Consultative meeting next month. It's been speculated that the U.S. has been pressuring Seoul to join its tactical missile system. The Korean government, which has been building its own missile defense capabilities, has not opposed Washington's plan, saying that it will help deter North Korea's nuclear missile abilities, as well as strengthen security on the peninsula. Another source said that the visit of U.S. Deputy Defense Secretary Robert Work last month probably had something to do with the THAAD system. During the visit, Work said that Washington hopes for extreme interoperability with Korea in the air defense system. However, the Defense Ministry in Seoul says it hasn't received any official notification from the U.S. regarding the issue. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
In light of the ongoing military conflict between Ukraine and Russia, NATO is taking measures to ensure that a similar situation does not occur in other parts of the region. The military alliance has announced plans to launch a rapid response force of thousands of troops. Connie Kim has the details.
NATO's plan to form a spearhead force of thousands of troops to protect its 28 member nations is widely expected to be approved during the NATO summit in Wales on Thursday. Although the ultimate size of the rapid response force has not been decided, senior officials at NATO say it will consist of an estimated 4,000 troops that could be deployed to an alliance state within 48 hours. It's designed to stave off a future crisis like the one unfolding in eastern Ukraine, where government forces are engaged with pro-Russian rebels. NATO Secretary General Anders Fogh Rasmussen said the task force would be trained to counter attacks by unidentified armed assailants, tactics NATO says pro-Russian separatists are employing against Ukrainian troops. It's a type of action that Ukraine and Baltic state members have been calling for since Russia annexed Crimea in March. There were questions about what type of measures NATO could take, considering the 1997 NATO-Russia Founding Act prohibits NATO from stationing soldiers in Eastern and Central Europe permanently. NATO officials say it'll rotate its combat forces in the Baltic states, which would not violate the treaty. NATO's move aims to stop a repeat of Russia's incursion in Ukraine, which President Petro Poroshenko has said is headed toward a great war of the likes Europe has yet to see. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
And now on to the latest internet security threat. Nude photos of an estimated 100 celebrities, mostly female, have been leaked online, raising major concerns. Now, the FBI says it is addressing the matter, and Apple, whose iCloud storage service is under suspicion for being the hacked network, says it is also investigating. Yudian has more.
Nude photos of Oscar-winning actress Jennifer Lawrence and pop star Rihanna were among the private photos of celebrities that turned up on the website 4chan. A spokesperson for Lawrence confirmed the authenticity of the images and slammed the hackers for a flagrant violence of privacy and vowed to prosecute anyone who shared the images online. Actress Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who also had her intimate photos leaked, criticized the people who posted and viewed her photos and said they were taken in privacy of her and her husband's home. The anonymous user who leaked the photos claimed they were obtained from Apple's iCloud accounts, sparking fears about the safety and security of the service. When activated, the iCloud service automatically uploads photos, emails, and contacts on your smartphone to multiple electronic devices, including tablet PCs and laptops. Apple released a brief statement on Monday saying it takes user privacy seriously and is currently actively investigating the report. If the hackers are caught, they could serve some major jail time. Christopher Cheney, who was found to have leaked nude photos of celebrities like Scarlett Johansson, was sentenced to 10 years behind bars. Yurian, Arirang News.
Korea's finance minister has pledged to push back against political factions that hinder development of the nation's service sector. Now, Minister Choi Kyung-hwan's comments came earlier in the day during a meeting with leaders of companies in the service industry. While acknowledging the fact that implementing a government plan introduced last month aimed at fostering 7 promising service industries will not be easy, he did stress the need and a strong will to put the nation's economy ahead of the interests of those political factions. To spur things along, the minister had called on lawmakers to pass 12 bills aimed at revitalizing the service sector and, by extension, the Korean economy. And the nation's consumer prices grew at the slowest pace in 4 months in August. Statistics Korea says the index rose 1.4% last month from a year ago, slowing from July's 1.6% gain. The agency attributed not so high numbers to a slowdown in the price increase of farm produce and energy product prices. The price of agricultural products tumbled almost 5% last month from a year earlier. Now, the Finance Ministry expects the nation's inflation rate to remain steady unless bad weather conditions cause major disruptions to the prices of farming goods. The rapidly changing e-banking environment, along with the sector's efforts to maximize profitability, has prompted banks in the nation to downsize their local branches. Some 270 have gone within the past year. Song Ji-sun has this report.
1 out of every 20 bank branches have closed down over the past year. As of the end of July, the total number of bank branches in Korea stood at just over 5,100, down 5% from a year earlier. That's the biggest decrease in 17 years. The 1997 Asian financial crisis that folded 5 small-sized banks and shuttered nearly 1,000 branches triggered a chain of murders among Korean banks. The move was followed by major restructuring that closed down more branches, and internet banking and automation have further reduced their number. Bank of Korea data shows that only 11% of all money transfers were made through counters at bank branches, with the rest handled through computers, smartphones, ATMs, or telephones. Such changes led to a reduction in workforce in the industry. Major banks in Korea such as KB, Shinhan, Hana, Korea Exchange, Standard Chartered, and Citibank reduced their workforce by an average of 3% last year. The umbrella group of banking labor unions has called for a one-day strike on Wednesday by bank employees to back their demand of ensuring employment. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
The amount of loans that Korea's central bank granted to local companies and public enterprises has reached its highest level in 15.5 years. The Bank of Korea says the amount stood at roughly $13 billion as of the end of last month. That's up 65% from a year earlier. Now, it came as the central bank printed more notes to support small and mid-sized companies with less room in the government budget due to a lack of tax revenue. This has expressed concern as excessive use of the BOK's authority to issue notes could lead to inflationary pressures. The Asia-Pacific region consumes roughly 60% of the world's energy output, and demand is said to be on the rise. So to help enhance cooperation, the APEC energy ministers have gathered in Beijing for a 2-day meeting. There, Korea's second vice minister of Trade, Industry and Energy, Moon Jae-do, emphasized the need for cheaper gas supplies to Asian countries, pointing to the fact that Europe pays less than Asia. APEC members agreed to work more closely to deal with gas as well as oil price fluctuations by diversifying their energy supply methods. And speaking of energy, the world's first solar plant constructed over water has started operations here in Korea. The local developers say similar plants like this one could one day make waves in the global energy market. Our Son Jang-in takes us to the plant.
This is the world's first rotating solar power plant on water. Unlike other conventional solar facilities that are fixed on land, this module is designed to move along with the movement of the sun during the day, which increases energy efficiency by 22%. The floating plant in Anseong, Gyeonggi-do Province consists of 1,600 panels that can produce 2,000 kilowatts of energy per day, which is enough to supply about 200 households. The concept of movable solar panels is not new, but other versions consume a great amount of energy to rotate. This one does not.
Using water buoyancy, 2 motor engines are enough to operate an 8,000 square meter generator that follows the sun's movement to maximize efficiency.
The installation can withstand winds of 50 meters per second and can adjust its level depending on water level changes. Water fountains around the module are designed to lower the temperature of the water to prevent outbreaks of algae, while also providing a beautiful lighting attraction at night. Researchers estimate that if rotating floating power plants are set up in a quarter of the total surface of reservoirs nationwide, it would generate over 5,000 kilowatts per hour, providing a possible breakthrough in the country's power shortage. 손정인, Arirang News.
The concept of the so-called sharing economy has been around for quite some time now around the world. Although a late starter, Korea's peer-to-peer marketplace is also growing quickly. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports on what the sharing economy looks like right here.
Green Car is a car-sharing service founded in 2011 that makes it easier for people to lend out cars at low prices. It's one of the most prominent examples of the sharing economy in Korea, in which people become more like users than owners of assets. Around 240,000 people have used this service so far. All it takes is a few taps on a smartphone application.
It's really easy to use this car sharing service. It's only $3 for using this Avante model for 30 minutes.
Users are instantly updated on what kind of vehicles are available in one of the so-called green zones, locations where people can pick up and drop off their vehicles after they're done using them. There are 700 green zones throughout the country, and so it takes just 10 minutes by foot on average to reach one. Green Car Marketing and Communications Director Hwang Sung-hee says that technological developments have allowed the convergence of the appropriate hardware and software, providing the best platform for the car sharing service.
The technological advances make it easier for us to operate as platform providers for vehicles. GPS allows us to track where the vehicles are and who's using them. And through the smartphone application, users can easily lock and unlock the cars they wish to use.
Companies like Green Car are using their sharing economy to find ways to utilize idle assets and providing a platform to make them more resourceful. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Bringing you the fresh updates from stories breaking in Korea and abroad. We give you a bigger and better picture of the world. Join Laah Hyun-kyung live from Seoul. Every weekday, only on Arirang.
Achieving gender equality in Asia is especially more difficult compared to any other countries, perhaps because of its Confucian-based culture. So to address the gender gap in the region, a forum is currently underway in Seoul. Here's our Shin Se-min with this story.
25 women from 17 countries who are prominent in their fields have gathered in Seoul for the Asia Women Leaders Program, where the priority will be on addressing gender gaps mainly in the Asia-Pacific region. Astrid Tuminas, who is regional director for Microsoft, opened the forum with a keynote address. In it, she said that having more educated women doesn't necessarily translate into more women leaders, particularly in Asia, because of cultural factors. She called on companies and corporations to take the initiative and invest in women as a resource.
Corporations should make the time and space and give the resources because they can't afford not to. Why can't corporations afford not to? First, there is a shortage of human talent, a shortage of human capital. And as the labor force shrinks, you are going to have to draw your talent from the women.
According to a recent report by the Korean Women's Development Institute, which is hosting the forum, Korea's lagging female economic participation rate over the past 13 years has amounted to $192 billion in social costs. And while Korea has invested in trying to narrow the gender gap in the workplace, one of the forum's participants says instituting change goes beyond a set of policies.
Government funds and support systems should not just be announced. They must be implemented and permeate a company's culture. Companies should not just follow these policies. They must also consider the distinctive characteristics of women. An understanding and thoughtful culture should be implemented.
The chairman of Industrial Bank of Korea says guaranteeing a balanced work life for women will eventually become a great asset that will increase the nation's competitiveness globally. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Now on to some arts news. Korea's ballet culture has developed quite significantly over the past few decades for multiple reasons, one being an open exchange program. Our Im Hyun-hee takes us to one such program called K-Ballet World, currently taking place in the artsy neighborhood of Daeangno. Take a look.
Ballet is one of the world's most recognized forms of dance, celebrated for its beauty, its grace, and its capacity for the exquisite. Anything from the classical to the contemporary, it's time once again for the K-Ballet World Annual Gathering of ballet students and dancers from some of Korea's top ballet troupes, as well as from around the world.
Through this relationship with foreign countries, we can develop the culture of Korean ballet. It's also a great opportunity for choreographers to stage their works to a wide audience, including those abroad, as this year's theme is Korean ballet to the world and world ballet to Korea.
The ballet extravaganza was established specifically for the development of Korean ballet through exchanges with companies around the globe. And it's through these relationships and networks that have enabled Korean dancers to excel in both the classical and modern forms of ballet. Dancer Seo Deok-in has a family history of ballet in Korea, but he himself went abroad to learn the techniques used around the world. And as a result, he now has a better understanding of the similarities as well as the differences between ballet cultures, a knowledge he can use to strengthen his own career.
Especially in Asia, they're more technical people, they're more kind of speedy and more active. They do like this kind of stuff. In Europe, they're more details, slow and more emotional. They speak like this, slow and more emotional, and this kind of stuff. So, well, I prefer Europe because this is my style, but well, it depends of the people.
As with anything, preference will always vary. But one thing is undeniable, and that is the fact that Korean ballet dancers have advanced through the art in just a short span of time, demonstrating extreme technique and strength, which has gained the Korean ballet culture recognition in the global community. Im Hyun-hee, Arirang News.
Good afternoon, I'm Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. It's currently sunny outside, but heavy clouds are moving in from the south where the rain is about to start. The precipitation is forecast to start on Jeju Island and then gradually expand up to the mainland by this evening, and we can expect up to 100 millimeters in the southern regions, while 120 is expected in the capital and the surrounding regions. And due to the rain, we can expect a cloudy day nationwide with strong winds, which will keep the daytime temperatures down. And also, the temperatures are looking to drop even more into the evening, so remember to layer up on the clothing. Now going over to our temperature readings, Seoul will top out at 27 this afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will be a bit cooler at 26 and 25 degrees. And moving over to other regions, Jeju Island tops over to 26, while Dokdo and Mangkungang will be on the chiller side on 23. Now that's all for Korea, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that's a wrap for now. Thank you for staying with us. I'll be back with more at 6 p.m. Korea time.